Hi everyone, this is something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time now, which is put forward Buddhist Refuge for those who want to take it. I would really love to do this live, but with my current health issues, sticking to a date and a time is awfully tricky for me. So by doing these videos that I can then privately send out to people who are interested and want to undertake the beginnings of the Buddhist or Dharma path, this seemed like the better option. So moving quickly onto it, you can take refuge vow to become a Buddhist. The refuge vow is a contract between you and the universe, really. I've got to give a massive shout out to Nicholas Breeze-Woods. I'm using a template of his for all of this that has been really helpful, just to keep on track and to be able to give some exercises for you guys listening and watching and moving forward. So basically, yeah, contract between the universe, and it helps if you've got someone in the room live acting as your witness. That is best, or a live stream, but not essential. It can be done just through video. So you make the refuge vow by yourself to the universe. Best to do it live. As I said, if you've got a Rinpoche or a Lama who can offer it to you, then do it. But otherwise, other sources like videos are fine. If you feel pulled toward Buddhism in whatever form of Buddhism that is, you can take the vow and the universe will hear your vow. We introduce you to some practices you can do. Yeah. So it's basically just the initial step towards becoming an official Buddhist. So I hope everyone's doing good. We're gonna obviously dive into things a bit deeper. To begin with, I just am going to talk a little bit about Padmasambhava, and the mantra and the 7-line prayer. Om Hung Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hung Om Hung Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hung Om Hung Vajra Guru Pada Siddhi Hung Hung. So that's the mantra for Padmasambhava. In the northwest of the land of Odana, in the heart lotus of the flower, endowed the most marvellous attainments, you are now renowned as the lotus-born, surrounded by many hosts of dakinis following in your footsteps. I pray to you to come to inspire me with your blessings, Guru Padmasambhava in the Tantric Buddha. So, normally recite 3 times when we're reciting the refuge vows. It said the first time he hears, the second time he comes, and the third time he's here and has arrived. There is a song form. I don't know the melody, so I just recite. It's very ancient, this tradition that it comes from. A group of Buddhist practitioners in Nepal put it together back in the 8th century, needing Padmasambhava to come because they had problems, and they composed the song and they sang it, and Padmasambhava was in Tibet at the time, and he flew from Tibet to Nepal, so bringing help to these people in need. So Padmasambhava is the Tantric Buddha, to put it simply. And I might throw a photo in, but his image is everywhere. He's, Very well known, very, very well known. I'd be surprised if most of you haven't already heard of him and know a little bit. Going into his life story is very long, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about it, but not go too deep. So find kind of your connection to the Buddha, and it can be historical Buddha who was born around 2,500 years ago, or it can be the Tantric Buddha, as I said, Padmasambhava, or it can be any Buddha. It's not kind of mutually exclusive. If you're Buddhist, it doesn't matter if you can't follow other paths. Although I'm a Buddhist, I also follow shamanism and other mystic traditions from all over the world. So it's a personal thing, finding where and how you can fit those things in and fit them together and make them work. And that's always going to be a very personal journey for everyone. So I can't really offer too much advice on that. My background, when we're talking about shamanism, started with Peruvian type Amazonian traditions that then moved into the more mystic traditions of the Andes, a little bit of Native American, a little bit of Central American, little bit of Himalayan shamanism, all sorts of little bits and pieces here and there over the years. Core shamanism, which is a very new Western thing in terms of shamanism. But yeah, I sort of managed to link them all in together and somehow make it work. I find it fits in very well with shamanism, especially with the type of Tibetan Buddhism that I'm involved with. And Tibetan Buddhism has this long history and connection with shamanism because Tibet was a shamanic country before the Buddhists came in. So Tibetan Buddhism is kind of a unique form of Buddhism, and it's quite different to most others. So we will talk a little bit about that and what you're doing. And I first of all want to talk about my lineage in Buddhism and taking refuge in Nongdro. So I probably took refuge in Nongdro around the time COVID hit. I'm not going to go too deep into my lineage because if I go my teachers, it's going to take forever. My main teachers are Chodpa Konze Dorje, Lama Glenn Mullen, and Nicholas Breeze Woods when it comes to the Buddhist stuff. They're my three go-tos. And my teachers that I'm regularly in touch with and I ask questions and study under. So yeah, again, shout out to Nick because I am kind of using his refuge script. So a big thank you for that. Okay, so Padmasambhava is not the main practice of mine. I know others who have it as a main practice, but for me it's not. But it is so heavily tied into the tradition that it does kind of need to be talked about. So there are lots of different forms of Buddhism, you know, depending where you go, like Japan, China, Bhutan, even places like Bali, Indonesia, you know, all over Asia, you're going to have different variations and different types of Buddhism. And by taking this refuge vow, you can then step into anything that you want. You don't have to step into Tibetan Buddhism. This is just a basic refuge vow, making that pact with the universe and making that first connection, and then from there you can go wherever you want with it. But yeah, there's just too many schools for me to go into. Even within Tibetan Buddhism, there's so many different schools. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. That would take, again, just way too long. So basically in Tibet, Padmasambhava arrived in Tibet and brought Buddhism there around the 8th century. So kind of in the European Dark Ages, and it was a shamanic country at that point. And so Padmasambhava, who was born in Odana, that's the story. The Odana is the Swat Valley in Pakistan. And although we think of Pakistan as a very Islamic country, there is still a lot of shamanism involved over there. Just kind of incorporated into an Islamic form. But yeah, that's kind of the story of Padmasambhava made his way from Pakistan through to Nepal, Tibet, and kind of brought the teachings all the way as he came. Shamanism now in the Swat Valley in the north of Pakistan is where Padmasambhava grew up, in that area, and it's considered to be a very magical, mystical place. And then I won't go into the whole long story, as I said, but if you want to look at the life story of Padmasambhava, feel free, really look into it. It's interesting. Has a lot of really interesting myths and stories and things behind him. I shouldn't say myths. Stories and acknowledgements of his lifetime and how he brought his teachings and different things. It is very interesting. As I said, not a main practice as mine, but a very strong guardian, a very strong protector, a very strong spirit. And you can find this online super easily. It's complex and long legend where it has lots of different adventures, but basically travelled all over India, travelled into Nepal. The Nepalese shamans say that they taught him. And undoubtedly that's probably true, because when he arrived in Tibet, he was called into Tibet by the king of Tibet, because they were having trouble with a particular spirit who was demolishing a monastery, and they were trying to build. Padmasambhava brought through all of his teachings from all over the place, merged them with the Tibetan shamanic traditions, and formed the very first school of Tibetan Buddhism called Nyingma, which means ancient school. And then gradually over the centuries, different schools began to form out of that. Tibet and its kind of got reformed. You get the Yellow Hat School, which is the very new kind. I don't know too much about them, to be honest. There are so many reformed that are not so magical. That are a lot more philosophy based. So as Nyingma is an ancient one, and for the most part really quite shamanic, so I find it fits well. I studied several types of schools. A lot of the practices I use, the sadhanas, different prayers, come from all sorts of different schools, but Nyingma is the primary one. I really hope I'm pronouncing that one right. I get that wrong sometimes. Is the main one, because I find it just blends really well. So I'm a Nyingpa. Yes, because pa means male and ma means female. So when you're looking at Buddhist things, if there's pa at the end, it's male, and if there's ma at the end, it's female. So that's the original Buddha back in India, born in Nepal, but lived most of his life in India and died there. Prophecies that one greater than him would be born and would teach the magical traditions came about. and this was Padmasambhava. That's who he is. So that's the two kind of traditions within Buddhism. You get the sutric version, which is very moral, good teachings, philosophy-based, that the Buddha basically taught. The classic Buddha, when you think of the Buddha, that's what he taught, but not a lot of magic. Then he died, and Padmasambhava came through from Adana and to bring through teaching Tantra, which is nothing like the New Age form of Tantra. Going to throw it out there. Tantra has been just completely abused by the West, and so many people have really wrong ideas about this. True Tantra is, again, extremely complex. I'm not going to go into detail, but very, very different to what the West, well, most of the West believe it is, which is very unfortunate, because Tantra in itself is incredibly strong practices in its traditional form, and a very magical form of Buddhism, where you're relying a lot on different rituals and all sorts of working with different spirits, and very mystic, very magical, very shamanic. Padmasambhava is the one Buddha in historical Buddha. Is the original historic Buddha, is another Buddha. That doesn't mean you're taking refuge in, you're going to take refuge in all of the Buddhas. Because it's easier to take refuge in an external figure, because we forget we are Buddhas. We are Buddhas. We don't realize that yet. We're Buddhas because we are full of karmic obscurations. So when we take refuge, literally sheltering underneath the great kind of canopy of the Buddha or the Buddhas, because it's an inspiration. When we realize that we're Buddhas ourselves, we don't need to take refuge, because we don't need shelter under that place of inspiration. So I think the next thing to do is really move on to taking the refuge vow. So I'm going to have that linked so that everyone can see. I'm going to try and figure that out. But essentially you recite it 3 times, and this is the refuge prayer. I'm going to read it, and what I want you to do is, as I'm going to read each line and give you a gap, you say it after me, and say it back to me. So you'll just repeat what I say. No obligation to this. There's no prerequisites. There's no kind of rules or anything. You're not signing your life away in any form. The only thing you would be trying to do, and just be a nicer person, try and be kind, try and be generous and compassionate, really, is just all that the refuge vows is asking for. So, the refuge vows, let's get into saying this, and you're saying this to the universe, to all the Buddhas. You're not saying this to me, you're saying it to the entire universe and all the Buddhas in it. Sitting in the center point of the 10 directions, in the heart of creation, beautifully seated, aware and focused, and all the Buddhas and the Gurus I take refuge. Sitting in the center point of the 10 directions, in the heart of creation, beautifully seated, aware and focused, in all the Dharma teachings and yidams, I take refuge. sitting in the center point of the 10 directions, in the heart of creation, beautifully seated, aware and focused, in all the brothers and sisters, I take refuge. I take refuge in the benefit of all beings. So, quickly going to explain that. I take refuge in the Buddhas. That's pretty simple. You're taking refuge in all the Buddhas, as I was talking about before. You're talking about the historical Buddha, the Buddhas that came before him, Padmasambhava, Maharaya, the Buddhas to come. So all the Buddhas, past, present, future. And you're sheltering under their protection, asking for their protection. The Guru is kind of a bit of a dirty word in the West. Again, like Tantra, it's gotten a bit messed around. But essentially it just means your teacher in Dharma, or your Dharma teachers. So I have, a couple different gurus. And this particular kind of way of looking at it is teaching of the Buddha's teaching. So you're taking refuge in the Buddhas and all those who teach Buddhist traditions as well. So practitioners, teachers, and that's kind of where the guru fits in. Whatever path that might be, whether it's a sutric path, whether it's a tantric path, whether it's any of the other multiple paths, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. You're just sheltering under the Buddhas in whatever form that might take. Then the next verse, or the next little bit, you're taking refuge in the Dharma teachings. Now the Dharma teachings is the Buddhist teachings. So it's any teachings that come from Buddhism, whatever form that is, and whatever you've got in... Sorry. And when you've got the word yidam, now yidam is basically a spirit helper. In Buddhism, these are seen as beings that do practice for, or you are connecting to them and you do their practices. So yidam is a Buddhist spirit helper, essentially. A bit of a protector at times. So you would do certain rituals, you would make offerings, say their mantras, possibly sadhanas, all sorts of things, for all sorts of different yidams, changes from yidam to yidam. I've got several that I work with that I might talk a little bit about a bit later. In Nepalese shamanism, you've got exactly the same thing, they just have a different word for it. They just don't call them yidams, but it's a spirit helper. So your yidam may be a being that you feel very connected to. Maybe you've always felt very connected to this being. I personally have always, I'm going to backtrack quickly. I've always had a strong connection with Kali. Now, Kali is seen more as a Hindu-type spirit being, but she definitely does go into the Buddhist just under different names and things. So I've always had from a young age, had a strong connection with Kali, and she's always been one of my yidams and my go-to. Even before I started really practicing Buddhism, I was doing, don't know if I should say this really, I was doing Kali mantras and Kali visualizations and things before I even really knew what I was doing. So luckily, she seems to have been very, very, very kind to me and not got angry when I've done these things without having appropriate empowerments and so forth. So she's been a big one for me. More so recently, Palden Lamo. She's another one of my yidams. Padampa Sangye is another one of my main yidams, probably one of the few male yidams I work with. Him and Yamantaka are probably the two male ones that I work with most. Sorry, I just had to go and just double check that name. So we often have a yidam we feel at home with, and I first realized I had Kali around me when I was an adult, but looking back, I think she's been there all the time. It was probably about 2016 that I kind of started down that path. After exploring some Hindu left path traditions, that's the Agoris. If you want to look a little bit into the Agoris, go for it. Very tantric. Very similar to a lot of what tantric Tibetan Buddhism is and does. So there's a lot of overlap there. But yeah, the Agoris are kind of what got me started after reading a series of books on the Agori. So that's kind of around when I deeply started to look into these things in a spiritual way. So yeah, you'll come across a yidam for whatever reason it is. You're probably gonna feel really connected to maybe just one, maybe a couple. I wouldn't say you can have too many, and I wouldn't say you can have too less. Just depends what you want to be doing, how often you want to be doing practice, whether you want to change up practices and be doing different practices for different beings, or whether you just want to stick to the same, say, 3 and do them rigidly. Obviously there's also practices for different ritual items, like the Purba, there's a lot of different practices, and again, I'm not going to delve deep into that because that's another huge topic just in itself. So you'll probably find this kind of karmic connection to a yidam, whatever it is, and there's lots and lots of them. And there's many little monasteries all over Tibet and Nepal and those regions, and they all kind of have their own yidam. Like Kali, there's loads of forms of Kali, and if you kind of understand that this is, as you can get to know more about Buddhism, and kind of make and feel that connection. And sometimes if you're working with a Lama in a close way, you'll really have a ripe sort of given yidam that you're working with, and they'll give you suggestions, and they will, kind of maybe see a yidam that would be best for you, or give you practices around yidams that would be best for you. I'm currently just about to start a 2-week Yamantaka Leirung retreat. So that's something that was suggested to me by one of my Lamas. So they can come in that way. They can pop up on Facebook and you think, oh, this looks like a really interesting event and empowerment and what maybe. I think I'm going to go to that, and you can come out with a yidam. Or you'll see, things pop up all over social media if you're a social media person, and you'll just feel drawn to certain ones, and other ones you'll kind of look at and go, no, not for me. Generally, these beings need empowerments to be given to use them. There's 3 parts to an empowerment. Sorry. There's the wang, the lung, and the tre. So the wang is like the power of the spirit that is connected to you, and you're connected in a ritual way to the spirit through the wang. Then there's the lung, which is the teachings about that being. And then there's the tre, which is the method of practice. So in an empowerment, you will normally get given all 3 of these so that you can have the empowerment, have the teachings, and know how to move forward and do the practice for yourself. I'm going to give you a couple practices later that can be done without empowerments needed. Sorry again. So these are going to be compassionate beings. Not all yidams are compassionate. Well, they're all compassionate, but some are tough love. Some of them pretty scary, really wrathful, lots of skulls and blood and weapons and all sorts of iconography like that. And these are seen as the wrathful beings. So they're ones that you definitely need empowerments to be working with. As I said, I didn't kind of do that properly with Carly. I probably should have. I didn't really know what I was doing. Luckily for me, nothing went wrong, and she's still here, sticking around for me. But yeah, that's really not advised. It's really good to get, if you feel like you want to work with a spirit or a yidam or any being, get the empowerment, if possible, before you do practice. So yeah, they're still compassionate, they're just a little bit scary. And they can be a little bit harsh at times in what they're trying to teach you. So of the beings, then the calm, what are we even going to say? The compassionate ones, serene, calm, gentle. They give gentle and peaceful, compassionate teachings. So for you to find a yidam for yourself, that will hopefully grow. If you do choose to follow any Buddhist path of any form, any sort, you will work out what it is you need to do and can find a connection to one. It'll come along. Then in the next verse, all the brothers and sisters of the Sangha. I don't think I actually said Sangha, so sorry about that. So that's basically, they're all of you. They're me, they're you, they're everyone all over the world who is practicing any form of Buddhism. The Sangha can also be a smaller group, even localized, your state, your country, your town. It sort of goes out. So you might have a really close little tight-knit Sangha, which is amazing. I don't at the moment. I'm trying to form one in my area. But there are online ones you can join. Normally they do have like a sign up fee, and I always feel a little bit weird about that. And a lot of them are in America and I'm in Australia, so the time zones just don't work out for me. And yeah, there's just a few reasons that I've never really been drawn to signing up to any of those sanghas. But essentially, it's any practitioner all over the world who's practicing any form of Buddhist or Dharma practice. And more specifically, if you get involved with a particular lineage of Buddhism, then the Sangha of that lineage is kind of going to be a close group of companions for you. So you take refuge in them too. I guess I do have quite a close Sangha with the other Cho students that I've been studying alongside with for maybe 4 years now. And I'm friends with quite a few of them on Facebook and various places, or follow them on Instagram and things like that. So yeah, and you know, it's really good to have that because you can talk to your Sangha brothers and sisters and they can help you and, you know, help understand teachings and sometimes explain things to you, or you can help them, what it is you need to do. It's a community. It's a really nice thing to have that little community of brothers and sisters who you can just communicate with, ask questions, ask about practices, you know, where applicable. Obviously, if something's secret, people are going to say, sorry, I can't teach you that. That's secret. You need to go off and do the da-da-da-da-da to attain this and then do it. Then there are the dakinis. Now, the dakinis are spirit beings, and they're the spirit beings who are female. And as Nick put it, they're kind of like the muses, the Greek muses. They inspire. You know, and you get into a regular practice. I'm at the moment a little bit out of regular practice due to my health. I like to do morning and evening practice every day. I've been a bit slack on that. When I go into this 2-week retreat, hopefully that will rewire those things into my brain. And I'll start doing morning and evening practice again. So when you're doing practice, the dakinis... let's see. I'm going to just backtrack a tiny bit, you know. So if you do morning practice and you sit and you do different sorts of mantras, sit quietly, make offerings, do sadhanas, all of those kinds of things. Often when you're sitting in emptiness in between practices, or sometimes in the middle of a practice, and if you do end up studying a bit further, things like dream yoga and things like this, the dakinis kind of whisper things to you. They give you, it's such a new age word, but download, for lack of a better term. I know Nick doesn't like the word, I don't like the word either, but I can't think of anything else that's better. But they will give you download teachings. And sometimes that can be a lot in like 10 seconds. You'll get, and this is throughout all spiritual traditions, this happens as when you're practitioners. When you're practicing, sometimes suddenly just within 10 seconds, you'll get this entire download of a whole new practice, or a whole new way of using a ritual item, or just this whisper or this thing just suddenly comes to you and it just downloads into your brain. And that will happen with regular practice, and they kind of, yes, just sort of hover around, and some of them are quite wrathful looking beings, the dakinis, so some of them can look pretty scary, but yeah, they do these kind of whispers and yeah, give downloads. And it's a bit new agey, but I just can't think of anything better. So Dakini is Sanskrit word. The Tibetan word is Khandra, which means skygoer or skyflyer, because they're also a bit like fairies in some respects. And like fairies, you don't want to mess with fairies. You don't want to mess with the Dakinis either. You want to respect them and offer to them and do things. Again, not going to go deep into it because that's a whole thing. But yeah, they're beings that float around and give you information, but at the same time, they need to be treated with a lot of respect. A lot of respect. And that's quite a bit like the fairies. For those who aren't sort of involved in any form of, UK type spiritual things, there's all the fae beings and the fairies and things, and fairies are seen as not the cute little fairies we have come to in the West, but they're kind of beings that you don't want to mess with, but they can also be really helpful if you follow those lineages. I don't. I know very little about it. That's just a tiny little bit that I've been told by an old teacher. But sorry, that's going off path now. So yeah, they inspire the practitioners, and the more advanced practitioner you are, the more likely they are to come to you and to give you these downloads and these ideas and things. There is actually a vow that can be taken to never cut one's hair. I believe this is quite deeply connected in with the Nagpa path, which that's why I'm wearing this shawl. I'm a Nagpa, which is a type of tantric practitioner who specializes in various things, or a Nagma, as my fiance is a Nagma. Ma, again, being female, my fiance being female, Nagma. So yeah, that's a path of a very, very mystic path of ordained Buddhist Lama, essentially. I've never called myself a Lama before. I don't know if I'll ever feel comfortable calling myself a Lama. But I guess now I technically am. I've taken the vows several times now in conjunction with several other teachings. Just to renew, and also for the teachings that were attached to taking those vows again. Sorry, that's just getting slightly off topic again. So the Dakinis, they give teachings in dreams. Again, as I mentioned, dream yoga, things like that. They can help uncover hidden teachings. Now we're getting to some of the esoteric stuff that's a bit more of the things that Padmasambhava did back in the 8th century when he was hiding teachings. And he would hide objects, ritual objects and teachings called termas, that were hidden in a very magical way and were guarded by Dakinis very often. And you get a group of practitioners called Turtan. And the Turtan are the treasure revealers. They are practitioners that go around and they either dig out rocks or sometimes in a very magical way. It's like they will use a practical ritual object like a purba to crack open a rock or to somehow unseal and pull something out and get teachings or ritual objects that have been hidden. So they also go into the teachings, which are really likely complex downloads, and these are all terma that were left behind for the benefit of the future beings by Padmasambhava. So the Dakinis are really important in that, and the Dakinis sort of whisper in the ear of practitioners, as I said, to inspire them in some way. So you're taking refuge in the Buddhas and the teachers of Buddhism. You're taking refuge in all the teachings of Buddhism. the spirit helpers of Buddhism, and you're taking refuge in the brothers and the sisters of the Sangha, the Dakinis who, as I said, whisper, give downloads. You're doing it for the benefit of all beings. You know, when we do ceremonies and rituals, whatever it is, we're always doing it for maybe a specific reason, but also underlying all beings. You're taking refuge for the benefit of all beings because everyone is a Buddha. We just don't know that. So in effect, you are saying that you're going to work towards becoming a conscious Buddha, so you can help the rest of the people. You're doing it for the benefit of all beings, so that when you're working with Buddhist practice, basically you're working with compassion. You're trying to alleviate suffering and build compassion. So these are the 4 immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in harmony, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Now, those 3 at the end are root central part in Buddhism. They're called the 3 poisons. And the 3 poisons are kind of bind us. They keep us dumb, stupid, unaware. They kind of keep the brain shut down in a little bit of a way. And bind us to the samsaric cycle of life and birth and rebirth and death and rebirth and so on. And a lot of that. And if you ever see a thangka painting, thangka painting, which I'm sure most of you will have seen, which is a painting of a spirit or several spirits. Those beautiful brocades around and decorated and hung on walls. There's a very famous one, which is the Wheel of Rebirth, which is literally the wheel of the worlds that you can be born into after you've died. Human world, animal world, hungry ghost world, and the others. There's a cockerel, a snake, and a pig in the middle. And they represent attraction, which is attachment, revulsion or repulsion, which is anger, and ignorance, which is bias. Because being attracted to something or being horrified and repulsed by it is being ignorant of Buddhist teaching or just any spiritual type teaching, they keep us in a place of ignorance. So when we're in a place of ignorance, we want to continue to collect karma, and we continue to expand a lot of energy and kind of just life going round in endless circles until we can ultimately break that. And ultimately, in a big way, the big round and round is go through birth, life, old age, sickness, death, rebirth, all over again. So, the 4 immeasurables are kind of governing aspiration and a kind of governing prayer that you're seeking to alleviate suffering and bring happiness and kind of also break out of that cycle as you move forward as a practitioner in any form that you choose. So when you take on Buddhist practice, at the beginning you get your first Buddhist practice, which is generally going to be a peaceful one. There's 3 forms of yidam. The 3 forms are peaceful, joyful, and wrathful. Peaceful, you're always starting off with a peaceful one because they're kind of the easiest to approach. And there's lots of different peaceful yidams. The 2 that I'm about to talk about are very peaceful, compassionate beings. And whether those beings have been initiated or empowered or whatnot, they're there. One of them is green Tara, and the other is Chenrezig, medicine Buddha. So I'm not going to go through any huge depth on this, but there's just a very simple form of practice for green Tara. All you need is a mala bead. So I'm sure you're all familiar with malas. 108 normally, or multiples of something up to 108. So this is my bone, skull, wrathful mala. This is my compassionate, peaceful mala. Just made out of different things for different reasons. So it's just a string of prayer beads, for those who don't know, and there's normally 108 of them, and because it's a peaceful practice, you need a peaceful mala. So something like sandalwood is really good. I've got this raksha bead, one that I use for peaceful practice. And then, yeah, as I said, my bone skull one that I use for wrathful. They're super cheap. You can pick them up for, if you go somewhere like Temu or something, you can pick them up for a couple bucks. Or you can get really elaborate, beautiful ones for a lot more. So you don't have to spend a huge amount on them, really. You can buy a decent one for about probably about 10 Australian dollars, I would say. Sorry. So super cheap, really, and they could be gemstone, they could be woods, they could be seeds, they could be bone, horn, all sorts of different ones. So yeah, you wouldn't use the bone for a peaceful being. I just have that one for my wrathful ones. They're human bone. I've got human bone malas. Yeah. Most of the ones you're going to find on eBay and stuff won't be human bone, and Dharma shops and whatnot, they're going to be animal bone. I also have a human bone kangling for cho, but they're quite hard to get through border control or things like that, so that can be a bit tricky, and sourcing human bone ones can be a bit tricky, but sorry, that's if looking forward to more wrathful stuff, so I'm going to stop there. So the green Tara practice, not going to go through it because it's pretty simple, and I'm just going to put a link up afterwards that you can look at and use to visualize and read. But essentially you get to a point where you are just in a peaceful place. You sit, you can do a little bit of meditation and just sitting or whatever, just until you're in a calm, relaxed place, and then look at a picture of green Tara, print out on the screen, however, maybe statue, and then you kind of go into that place, you visualize her in front visualization. If you don't have an empowerment, you never self-generate or self-visualize as a being. You always front visualize if you do not have empowerment. So you visualize her in front of you, and you say her mantra, and you would say that 108 times or multiples of. 108 is great, takes maybe 5-10 minutes, boom, 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 and that's that bit of the practice over. Now some of you may have worked with Bolha but before. Bolha is a good friend of Nick's, who is a Nepalese shaman, also kind of a teacher of mine, and he teaches that you hold the mala. In his tradition, Trying to remember. In the right hand. Right hand. Yeah. I hold mine in the left hand. No, sorry, I hold mine in the right hand. But for Buddhist tradition, it's normally held in the left hand. I think I always, when I first picked up a mala, it just so happened that I started using it with my right hand, so that's just become my go-to. And if you have never worked with a mala before, you'll have one standalone bead, and you just start there, and you just count through, saying the mantra with every time you move one of the markers. So yeah, I hold mine in the wrong hand, but yeah, I don't think that's a huge issue. And yeah, you start with the single bead, what's called the guru bead, and you just go around one by one, saying the mantra each time you move one of the beads. And so you do that 108 times until you've gone all the way back around to the guru bead, and could begin again if you want, or it's time to set it down. If you ever get interrupted, this is just a quick note, a little off track. If you're in the middle of doing mantras and you get interrupted, someone knocks at the door, something happens that you have to attend to immediately, you can tie a knot in your mala and set it on your altar. And this kind of says, I'm not done. So it's a bit hard to remember where exactly you were up to, but if you need to urgently take care of something when you're in the middle of practice, I was taught by one of my teachers, you can just tie a little knot in your mala, not too tight so you don't want to break it, and that just says, I'm not done, I'm coming back, I will finish. So we're going to get a little bit deeper into some stuff. It's always good when you begin with a spirit, deity, being of any sort, it's good to do 100,000 repetitions of their mantra. That's basically the entry level. Now, 100,000 mantras is one mala of 108 for about 3 years. So it's kind of a long time, but also not a huge amount of time. And you can take this as slower or quicker as you like. That's just a bit of a classic, and kind of what is the recommended amount when you're beginning to work with a being. And, you know, really it just takes a couple minutes in the morning to sit quietly, start the day, say hello to your spirits. You know, I know people put out a few offerings and things, light some incense, set out your space, do your practice, do your mala, and then get on with your day. I know people who, when they're walking, when they're on public transport, when they're driving, they'll have memorized the mantra and they'll just be saying that over and over and over. They won't be able to really keep track of how many times they've said it, but they'll just go over and over and over and over as they're walking, driving, you know, in between places, just going mantra, 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 mantra. And that's a really nice way of accumulating it if you don't like the pressure of having to sit down and do a really formalized 108 count, or if you struggle with having that routine. Okay, there's a mower behind me, so I hope that the mic still picks up okay from here. So her mantra 108 times, and you're doing it for all benefit of all beings. You're doing it for all your relations, and we'll come to that a little bit more in a moment. So that's the green Tara one. The other peaceful one is Chenrezig medicine Buddha. Now, Chenrezig, and I will also attach pictures and stuff for him, so you can see who he is. Chenrezig is male, Green Tara is female. Chenrezig sits there with his hand clasped over his chest, holding a wish-fulfilling jewel between his hands in the prayer motion. He's holding a mala, and in the right hand he's holding a lotus flower in his left hand. And he is male, kind of peaceful, very compassionate. He's the Buddhist saint of compassion. Now, this Bodhisattva is a Buddha that has not vanished from the world. They kind of wish to continue to influence the world and be born often in the world again so they can benefit all beings in a very physical way. So you'll know his mantra, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty certain that you're going to know this one. His mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Again, I'm going to link stuff to this to give you all the information. And again, you would sit down, get to a peaceful place, imagine him in front of you, visualize him in front, sit quietly, do the mantra 108 times, visualize him radiating out light that washes away, as it says there, as it will say in the practice, and all sentient beings will be washed with this light, and all ignorance, negativity, and challenges in the way will be, and enlightened beings like Chenrezig. And then you've done what you've dedicated, the positive that you have created. And in the Buddhism, that's called merit. Merit's a funny one because you accumulate personal merit, which grows your practice, but all merit that you gain is always given away. Yeah, it's a beautiful concept. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into merit, but there's a lot of practices that are quite simple that accumulate huge amounts of merit. And that merit then radiates throughout all beings, as when you're a practitioner. And through this practice, may all beings attain awakeness, and things like this with the peaceful beings. Their practices are always things like this. And through the merit of this practice, may all beings be liberated by the ocean of samsara, the wheel of life, birth and rebirth and death and everything else, and from samsara's circle of birth, old age, sickness, death, as I spoke about before. Look, I am not a great Buddhist. I'm going to be 100% with that. I'm a bit of a bad Buddhist. I don't love how long and poetic a lot of Buddhist scriptures and sadhanas are. I prefer very concise practice. That's just the way I work. So I like really short practices, really powerful, really short practices. So when I'm given a new sadhana to work with, I usually familiarize myself with it. And then once I kind of know the meat behind it, I will simplify it down to a form that works for me. Trying to take all of the really, really essential parts and just simplifize that down into a form that I can do a bit quicker. And that isn't so overly wordy. A lot of Buddhists love poetry and writing, and it's really, really beautiful to read, but if you're doing daily practice and things like that, it's a lot. And can be really long-winded. Like, we're talking some sadhanas maybe 100 pages, say. That's not normal. That's a very, very, very long one. But yeah, they're often not short. So a sadhana. A sadhana is a prescribed prayer, like a verse, and come up to a ceremony, and you make the prayer from your heart. And that's pretty much how I approach Buddhist practice. When I get the practice, I take the sadhana, which is long and complicated, take the essence, improvise, keep the important bits, say the prayers from my heart in the moment. That kind of makes me a kind of bad Buddhist, because I'm not following exact instructions. I normally check in with my lamas and say, hey, I've kind of done this. Is this okay if I shorten the practice? And just make sure that I'm not missing anything vital. There's a lot of teachers, lamas, Buddhists out there who would be quite upset with me saying this, because you're kind of not supposed to do it. But I don't know, that's just how my brain works. A lot of really strict Buddhists will say, no, you have to do it exactly as it's written to the word. There is no flexibility. So I'm quite lucky that my teachers are quite flexible. So I like the shorthand, and if that means being a bad Buddhist, I'm fine with that, and maybe I'll regret it in my next life or something, but for the moment it's cool. I'm doing okay so far. I haven't had any issues. So for all my relations you dedicate to, it's called sealing the practice. When you have something ceremonial and you make a prayer, you're kind of giving it away. You're giving it away to the benefit of all beings that help you generate compassion, and compassion is the central point of this generate compassion. And of course, if you give away merit, you're really giving it away from the heart, and it kind of comes back to you. So you gain merit, you give it away, and it comes back, and it's just this continual cycle. I will help it. When I use it, it will help remove negative karma. It will help remove any obstructions, and it will help you on your spiritual development. And that's kind of why we gain merit and use merit. Because of what you want to happen is that you've got just enough to give away, unattached, knowing that if you do, it's just going to come straight back. You're not giving it away forever. You're not losing something. It's just this cycle. You gain merit, you give it away, it comes back tenfold, basically. Maybe not tenfold, but I like to think of it that way. So yeah, up to this point, maybe just take a quick second and see if you've got any questions that you want to email me, and maybe just quickly scribble down if you do have anything. Okay, so moving on, 10 directions. The 10 directions are really central, not just in Buddhism, but basically all sacred traditions. Really, the 10 directions are literally the 8 around you, in front of you, behind you, left, right, and below and above. In essence, that's the 10 directions. When you're doing practice, you often involve a prayer that you're doing protection work or something. You will work with the 10 directions. If you're working with a purba, which I did show earlier, I have several, but that's the closest one. It's kind of like a dagger spike, used Himalayan shamanism as well as Buddhism. But you can use them to pin down hostile energies, and you can pin in the 10 directions. If you're working in with the 10 directions in that way, using that particular item. And you can visualize Purba in the morning practice. That's something that I do when I do morning practice, as a form of protection, and you kind of pin those directions. Again, you kind of need teachings to do this, so it's not something I'm saying go off and do. Just quickly mentioning it. So a wrathful yidam. Okay. A practice with a yidam without initiation, as I've said, is not considered a good idea. There's nothing stopping you from doing it, but it's not a good idea. Things can go wrong. Things can turn nasty. So their name that you... So, as well as you know that they're wrathful means that they have high energy, and if you're not grounded, that can be disruptive. So part of the grounding is getting the initiation and the empowerment, and you've taken refuge, so you can take refuge initiations as they come up now. And more as they come up on Zoom and Facebook and things like I've already mentioned. There's a great Facebook group called Vajrayana Events, which then there's also Three World Shamanism, which is a fantastic group that is quite heavily shamanic Buddhist based. I'm going to also link to a small group that I run. So empowerment's the things that bring you never heard of or may have heard of, and some of them are peaceful and some of them are wrathful. But once you get an empowerment, it's basically giving you a safeguard, because it's kind of like an introduction to the spirit. So rather than you kind of just blundering around, it's giving you a formal way to be introduced to it and move forward. So generally wouldn't do wrathful practice unless you knew about it and you've have the empowerment for it and read through the sadhana or the practice for it. And if you want both the malas practice each day, fine. Chenrezig and Green Tara, or whichever one appeals to you. I put the, one male, one female, as Nick did, with his refuge ceremonies, because people have different preferences, so it's just nice to have a couple to pick from. And if you don't want to do neither, that's fine as well. You don't have to, just because you're taking refuge doesn't actually mean you have to do any form of practice just because you've taken this. So yeah, it's not something to worry about. It's not like we carry on the practice for 3 years. No, you carry it on for as long or as little as you like. Some practices I've been doing for I don't know, going well over 10 years now. Other practices, are a lot newer to me that I've done less of. Other ones I kind of got bored of and moved away from. Maybe I'll come back to one, move it around a bit. It's really up to you. And just by taking refuge, there is absolutely no commitment, not at all. You're just taking refuge. There's no commitment to move forward in any way. If you do, I'm here to help. I'm happy to guide you in any way I can, answer questions. I do have a sadhana that I will teach, that I was given to by one of my Lamas, who said that I could instruct and teach it. So we will move on to that at some point. And mantras sometimes have melodies. I don't know any melodies, so I don't sing my mantras. I just recite them verbally in voice. It is really nice to sing a mantra or a melody. I practice Cho, and all Cho texts have different chants and melodies to them. I'm pretty horrible at remembering them, but they're really, really beautiful. Really beautiful. And if you jump on YouTube, you can find various videos on the melodies and prayers and things, and you can teach yourself that way if you do want to be singing them. And yeah, there's just so much stuff on the internet now that it's so easy to find information. So yeah, as I said, the lineage that I do hold most to, or the lineages that I do hold most to, are very magical and mystical. A lot of ritual and ceremonies involved. Some interesting spirits involved. And it's really good to join these Facebook groups if you don't have a physical human teacher that you can go to. So you are able to ask questions and get advice and answers from pretty experienced people. So, in the world of medicine traditions, just about every culture in some form work with the 5 elements: earth, water, air, fire, and space or ether. Now, every tradition will have those in different places and looking different ways and worked with in different ways and be associated with different colours, maybe animals, different iconography, whatnot. They all tend to have the 5 elements. All those traditions, it generally is that space in the center, that space, and then the 4 elements on the outside. That's fairly normal. There's a fundamental Buddhist teaching which applies to all sacred traditions, basically, about emptiness and form, and the teaching is that form emerges from emptiness and dissolves back into emptiness again and then re-emerges as form. It's a universe breathing in and out. And it's kind of like the Big Bang Theory. It's like the Big Bang happened because it kind of emerged out of emptiness and nobody really knows what's going to happen at the end. But my bet is it's going to collapse all back into itself. This is kind of taking Nick's words, but I actually agree. It's all going to collapse back into itself eventually and go back into emptiness, which is basically the cycle of humanity. And then again we'll re-emerge. And emptiness is the center point of the medicine wheel. So not everything emerges from that point in the medicine wheel teachings. I don't know a huge amount about medicine wheel teaching, so I'm not going to go into that deeply. That was just a quick note. Our soul gives birth to all of those aspects because that's... Oops, sorry. I'm just going to jump back. So everything emerges from that point, and in the medicine wheel, it's our soul. I will just add that. And not my spiritual manifestation, it's not my emotions, it's not my thoughts in my soul. And each time we're born, our soul gives birth to all of those other aspects because that's an empty place. And so from the heart of creation, that is emptiness. It's sitting in the center, and the center in where I mean getting some really quite deep stuff here, but the center is where you go to do a ceremony. if you're doing a ceremony, you step into the center of the world, and you're stepping into that center point because you're very much heart of creation, and it is absolutely the center of the universe, and that's the heart of creation. So, as I said, I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, Lingma, Nagpa, but you've had refuge. You can become a Theravada, Zen, Gulug. Oh, so many schools, so many different schools. I really can't remember all of them. There's so many different schools of Buddhism that you can now move into. Taking refuge is just the first step to moving towards practice if you want to go further. Again, you don't have to go any further than this, but it's giving you permission to now step a bit further. So yeah, it doesn't have to be Tibetan Buddhism, it could be Zen. You'll find the right path, and as you continue through your journey, some of you may be well into your spiritual journey while you're taking this. But yeah, you'll find things that will just kind of start clicking. Just kind of takes a bit of time for that to happen, and you've got to be a little bit patient, which I'm not the best at. So, if you have this hunger to go and be a Buddhist and start practicing and getting empowerments, awesome, go for it. If you feel like you just don't want to go any further, again, awesome, just go with your gut, go with what you want. This is just a real general introduction and just taking refuge. Just asking to be basically looked after by the Buddhas. As I said, my main background was shamanism, Amazonian, Andean, jungle, lots of South American, especially Peruvian, bit of Bolivian, all sorts of bits here and there. I personally don't do Chenrezig or Tara practice to me. They just don't appeal to me. I do have the empowerments. I receive the empowerments, but just doesn't appeal to me. Actually, I don't have Green Tara empowerment. No, I don't have her empowerment yet. But she's just never really... She's stunning, and a stunning being, and such a compassionate, useful spirit. But it's just one that I've never really gone down the path of. And yeah, you guys can practice these too without the empowerments, because you're just front visualization, you're not self-visualization. So just mantra every day while you're visualizing her. I will visualize blessings going out to the world. She's somebody that, if you go visit a health professional or something and you're sitting in the waiting room and there's just so much going on, so much hurt, panic, angst, it's really nice to be able to sit and just sort of mutter her mantra just to calm things down. Really, really calming. Same with Chenrezig, his mantra, incredibly powerful, very, very calming. Really just wonderful practices, just not my go-tos. So if you do it and you radiate the blessings, whatever practice may be a little down the line, and the peace and compassion and love she's shown with her left right foot extended because she's in the process of standing up. And that's why she sits like that. She's standing up because she knows that you're suffering and she's rushing to help you. She's often called the Savoress and also the name Dolma in Tibet. Dolma is a woman's name in Tibet, so Dolma is the name of Tara. Common thing, once taken refuge and received a Dharma name, that is something that, again, if you've taken refuge and want to step further, I can give you a Dharma name, which I guess is like a Buddhist name to take on. I have two given to me by two separate Lamas. So you can have a couple Buddhist names, Dharma names. So yeah, once you've done refuge, I will be able to give you a Dharma name. The other really common thing to do after receiving refuge and Dharma name is to go on to the rest of the Nondro practices. This is disputed quite a bit around Nondro, how much is needed, how little is needed, what form it takes. There's lots of different forms of it. I'm going to try and find and link this really wonderful 1 week long Nondro. As some forms take years, some forms take like 5 years to finish, and this is just preliminary path before even moving forward. I did a very concise version, as well as the more official one. I did not enjoy the official one whatsoever. I got no joy out of doing it. But the most common official one is taking refuge in the 3 jewels, and in conjunction with performance of 100,000 prostrations, purifying pride. You've already done the taking the refuge part. Cultivation of bodhicitta, purifying jealousy. In the formulations, this is included under step 1, thankfully. 100,000 repetitions of Vajrasattva's 100-syllable mantra, purifying hatred, aversion. 100,000 mandala offerings, purifying attachment. And 100,000 guru yoga practices, purifying delusion. It's a lot. It's really a lot. I had no joy out of doing all of that. I just did it. I found the more concise version to be much more interesting and personally much more powerful for me. Okay, so I'm going to link to my email, but if any, if you want to contact me, it's zaccrookes@gmail.com. I'll have that in the links below. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for listening. As I said, I would have loved to have done this live, but with my health right now, I just couldn't commit to that. I will be teaching that sadhana soon that one of my lamas gave me. So when I have the energy to put that together and teach on that, I will. So please, if you're interested, email me and mention that, and I'll keep you in mind. And if you've got any questions about anything, I know today's been a bit all over the place, and we've done refuge and we've spoken about several different things, talked about 2 practices. It's been quite a lot to take in, potentially. So if you've got any questions that may pop up over the next day, 2 days, week, feel free to email me or message me on Facebook, and I'll do the best I can to answer. Thanks everyone, appreciate you listening. I really hope you got something out of it, no matter what that was. As long as you got something out of it, I'm happy. Cheers, goodbye, hopefully see you again soon.